You walked through that very door once. Why his?
You know, I discussed the whole mystery of King Solomon's mines in the land of Ophir and King Hiram and the 3-year voyage from Eilat, from the Red Sea to the mines of Ophir, the land of gold. You're familiar too, probably, with Gene Savoy in the United States.
I met him the other day. He was here.
He was here, well, good. And he, you know, he's now claiming that he believes that the Chachapoyos area is the land of Ophir. And myself, I tend to agree with him that I believe that the land of Ophir was also South America. But according to the Bible, the ships from Ophir left from the Red Sea on a 3-year journey, 1 year to the land of Ophir, 1 year in the land of Ophir, and then 1 year to return. Now I'm thinking, in your book, The Maldive Mysteries, and coming to the 0 Degree Channel, then out into the Pacific, to me, it's my theory that the land of Ophir is here, Chan Chan, even here Sipan, this area, and maybe the gold's coming out of the Andes, but I believe that somehow the Phoenician ships of King Solomon crossed the Pacific to come to South America.
Well, if you look at the globe, and I have one, I show you, it is possible that they could come, but everybody seems to look at the Pacific as nothing. It is half the planet.
It's one third of the planet, I think.
Look here. Here you have the Mediterranean area.
Sure.
And here you have America.
Sure.
Yeah. Look, there is nothing at all to go here.
Yeah, it's nothing.
With the wind and the current.
I agree.
To go all 2/3 around the
world. But you know, I think it's the interesting thing that both Egypt and Israel at that time could have ports on the Mediterranean, but also on the Indian Ocean for that trade. Now, to the land of Ophir, it seemed to be, I'm thinking, they would go through the Maldives, they would stop in Sri Lanka and here in Sumatra, and even go through here, and then I believe cross to the Pacific.
I can guarantee you, I will give you everything I own if you can undertake that. It's not possible. I mean, it is absolutely impossible with any kind of prehistoric voyage to cross the Atlantic here. You can cross it here, the north following the coast. But it's infinitely, even from the Maldives. If I was going from the Maldives to America, I would do it in a few months this way. But it would take a lifetime, many generations to get that way. I can assure you.
To cross the Pacific.
Yes. The Pacific is excluded.
You really don't think that people can cross the Pacific, really?
Not the tropic Pacific. Impossible. It's been tried by the best people imaginable. The bishop, who was a fantastic person, he tried to sail from the Philippine Sea to Polynesia. He tried for 3 years. Then he gave up and went to Hawaii, and he paddled the Hawaiian canoe to Polynesia like nothing.
Yeah.
Then it was tried by the, what was the name? I think it was the Taipei expedition.
Taipei, sure, yeah.
Yes, from Austria. They worked for 7 years to prepare an excellent expedition in the Philippine Sea and sail to Polynesia. And they asked me what will happen, and I said, I can guarantee you, you're going to end up in Canada. You'll never make it. And that's what happened. They skipped the ship off Japan, and the wreck ended up in British Columbia.
Okay, in your book, Aku Aku, there's 2 interesting things that I want to ask you about. One is you have some photographs of some stone heads, some with beards.
Yes.
The other one is when you excavated one of the giant statues that's near the Rocco volcano site, there was a ship carved into it.
Yeah.
Now, so who do you think these people are with the beards, and who, what kind of ship was that carved onto that statue?
It's easy to answer the last question, because that we know, that was a reed ship, there's no question.
A reed ship, sure.
Yes.
And the Tortora reeds that grow at that volcano
Right.
are coming also from Lake Titicaca,
Yeah.
and also from Chan
Yeah.
too, the Tortora
You
reeds.
had last year, or maybe it's been more than a year now, we had here a Spaniard, a good friend of mine, Kitin Munoz. He built a Tortora reed ship in Peru and sailed it straight to the Marquesas in 57 days. So that is easy.
So to go there, but to return is difficult. This is what you're
It is
saying.
possible, but difficult. But if you want to return from any part here, you have to do like the early Spaniards. You have to continue all the way over to Asia and go around and back in.
And come to British Columbia
Yeah.
like that.
But as I say, it would be very easy to go from Madagascar or even the Maldives, the Indian Ocean, just around the southern tip of Africa, and over here. All the modern sailing yachts, if they sail around Africa, what do? They go right across the Atlantic, almost to Brazil, to catch the good wind and come back.
And come back again, sure.
So, if the time span was what you tell me there, a year, on a 3-year voyage, it would be no difficulty at all.
I'd like to show you this. This is petroglyphs from a Smithsonian Institute book in 1893.
Yeah.
These are found in the Finke River in Australia. These are the petroglyphs here. It's like the menorah candle of the Hebrews. This is an amber glass obelisk pin that was found also in Australia. This appears to be Egyptian origin. These are also heads that were dug up in New South Wales. They appear to be Phoenicians, this man like maybe has a beard or something.
Are these dug up, really?
Yeah, these are all authentic. They're from Australia.
Because, where are these stone heads?
They're now in a museum in the Blue Mountains near Sydney right now.
Because if these are really found in Australia, they look remarkably like stone heads in the Maldives and in South Yemen.
Yeah, South Yemen, right?
South Yemen.
Yeah.
And from South Yemen, I just had, was it yesterday? I had a letter from a person who had been in South Yemen during the English reign there.
Right.
And a big ship with 50 people came drifting to South Yemen from the Maldives. And he said that the people on board, that was a ferry boat going between the islands in the Maldives with school children and women coming on a shopping trip. And a storm blew them to South Yemen. And from South Yemen they worked and earned money, and then they set sail and sailed back again to the Maldives and got there.
Yeah. You know, interesting too about the Maldives and your statue, with the people with the long ears.
Yes.
But also the Incas were supposed to have the long ears like that.
The Incas learned it from the Mochica, from the pre-Inca, the people we find here,
Yeah.
or long ears.
Could you speak a little bit about the site here?
What is that?
About the dig here that's going on here? Are you at liberty to speak about the site and the dig?
Yeah.
The pyramids.
Yeah. Have you been there?
We walked up and were told to come back and get authorization.
We met with the Italian archaeologist woman.
Young woman.
Mariela.
See, yeah.
Yeah.
And she told us there were 26 pyramids there, is that right?
Yeah, but you must go and see. You don't find another site like this in all of South America.
Yeah, we were there.
We walked up to the pyramid. We walked up to the.
You went up the stairs and...
Yeah.
Yeah, but she met us. We couldn't come right to the dig. She stopped us from going just that part there.
But you went up the stone or cement stairs to the lookout place.
No, sir. We walked up the side of the hill on
On
a
the
trail.
trail,
There's a
the
trail
back.
that we walked up.
You went on Wakaona, the first pyramid on the left.
Yes.
Yes.
With the canopy on the
Where
top.
she is.
Canopy on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you should go further and up the stone steps and you'll see the whole site. It's a terrific site.
How big is the site altogether?
220 hectares.
And I understand there are 3 different cultures we're dealing with. There's Mochica, Chimu, and Inca
Right.
occupation all
Right.
the time.
Right.
What's the estimated age at this point?
Well, we have absolutely no estimation yet. That's why we are digging. It was assumed to be late, but from what we find now, there is every evidence that it is early, because we found we are starting on the surface, of course. So we've uncovered on top of one pyramid, we have uncovered Inca stone temple ruins, and they are overlapping earlier Chimu adobe temple ruins. First of all, it's the first time any temple has ever been found on top of any pyramids in South America. And there we find also sporadic sherds of Mochica and sherds from Cajamarca, from early period Cajamarca, contemporary with Mochica here. So even though we have not penetrated to any great depth yet already now, we have evidence that there was trade or exchange contact between Cajamarca far away up in the Andes and here. And we find plenty of evidence of long-range voyaging up and down the Pacific coast, plenty of spondylists from Ecuador and Panama, and and we have turquoise from Argentina, and we are sure to find lapis lazuli, which is so common in Japan, which comes from Chile.
From
And we
Chile.
have jungle bird feathers and ceramic from the other side of the Andes. So we have evidence of extensive trade, long distance trade.
Have you ever been to Arica in Chile and to the
Yes.
pyramids there? I mean, the mummies.
Not the pyramids.
Not pyramids, the
Yes,
mummies.
the mummies.
And they have dated those mummies as 9,000 BC, 11,000 years old.
Yeah, that makes creates many problems that I think is difficult for many professional scientists to accept. There may be errors in the dating, but of course dried human bodies is possible to preserve that long.
Sure.
But there is no reason to suspect that civilization here goes beyond 3000 BC. But what is interesting in Arica and in Ila, just to the north on the Peruvian side, Ilo, I'm sorry, is the evidence of intimate contact with Tiahuanaco in Titicaca. When I started the Contique voyage, everybody said that people from Tiahuanaco could never have descended to the coast. Today we know that there are pre-Inca roads going down to the coast, and there is plenty of Tiahuanaco materials, Tiahuanaco hats and ceramic ware, etc., in Ilo and Arica.
In the London Times article that criticized your new book, they were saying that one of the main reasons they were criticizing you is that you continue to say that Polynesians are from South America. Is that your theory, that Polynesians are from South America?
If people are writing that have never read my book.
Yeah.
Because in everything I write, I make it clear that I believe the present Polynesians came out of Southeast Asia by way of the northern route that I explained to you to Polynesia, and that there is a substratum from Peru. But there are so many people who have just one thing in mind, and that is to climb to the top and become famous by criticizing other people who do something, and they have never done anything themselves, nor do they read the opinion of the other. I mean, I'm used to this, so I don't, it doesn't give me any ill feelings anymore.
Do you think that the land of Ophir of the Bible might be South America?
I have never touched upon that theory and that thought. if it is correct what you mentioned now, that it's a question of a 3-year voyage.
According to the Bible, it was 3 years.
Yeah, I think that we should look at the Bible as a serious ancient document. And if I speak purely on what is practical, it is possible to go from the Middle East to America and back in 3 years.
Sure. One other controversial question I'd like to ask you is, there are the Greek and Egyptian records of possible Atlantic civilization, Atlantis, that kind of thing. Do you think there's any credence to this idea of Atlantis or a lost continent, or even just Atlantis was perhaps in the Caribbean or Florida or South America? What do you think?
To this I will answer that there are theories about Atlantis and there are theories about another sunken continent in the Pacific. There is no sunken continent in the Pacific. That we know for sure, because we know the ocean bottom and we know that there has never been any sunken landmass there in human times. When it comes to the Atlantic, the situation is completely different. We know that before human time, of course, Africa and America was united. We know also from oceanic research, the ocean bottom, that there was land where the Atlantic ridge is now, dry land, because there is deposits of freshwater plankton, which means there must have been a lake. And if there was a lake, there must have been a land around it. We don't know yet if that land sank before human time. But we do know that there was some very severe disturbances in the Atlantic about 3000 before Christ, because Iceland cracked. There, it is possible through timber stuck in a canyon in Greenland, in the lava, to date that volcanic disturbances to 3000 more or less BC. And that crack continues into the bottom of the Atlantic. So it must have been a really strong disturbance. And 3000 BC happens to be a date that is repeated both when we study the beginning of the Pharaonic dynasty, it's more or less 3000, 3001 BC. Also the Sumerian, 3000, 3100 BC. The Maya calendar, recalculated into our system, is 3113 BC. And if we study the climatic changes in Sahara, it started about 3000 BC. So I think that when it comes to accepting or rejecting the Atlantis theory, we shall be very alert. We shall not reject it, but we cannot yet accept it before we have more concrete evidence. But it would be very curious if all these early civilizations started at the same time, and all of them on either side of the Atlantic speak about a flood where land sank into the sea and where their ancestors were saved and come to their subsequent destination. So I would not exclude Atlantis, although I think that there are so many wild theories about it that it is scaring the great majority of scientists from accepting the possibility.
Well, it seems that most scientists, it's like the status quo, and nobody wants to rewrite the history books. You know what I mean? And the way they are taught by their professors, this lineage, it's difficult for them to somehow change and embrace new theories.
There is one great problem with modern science, which seems to be diminishing, but it has ruled the civilized world for half a century. and that is that they discard all evidence one by one, as long as there is no solid proof, one by one. And in that way, they are very often, I think, throwing the baby out with the water, instead of considering the possibility that when you have these many evidences, is it possible that it is a coincidence or is it not? I think that from personal experience, and I have a good deal of experience when it comes to traveling on the ocean with primitive craft, we do a tremendous error by closing our eyes to the fact that there is no distance from Africa to America, no distance from America to Polynesia, if you travel the correct way. And in the Indian Ocean, you can travel one way half the year, the other way the other half the year. So there too,
With the monsoon.
from the time man had a boat that would float, the ocean is a convener and not an ice field.
Exactly. Well, I often point that out in my books. Oceans are highways, not barriers to travel.
Right.
And the easiest way to get from one continent to another is not to walk,
Right.
all over the place, but just to go in
The
the
barriers are the deserts and the jungles and the mountains.
And the hostile tribes who are going to attack you.
Exactly.
I absolutely believe you.
On the ocean, they can carry food and water in any quantity with them. In the continents, they can only carry what they have on their back or on the back of a llama in this part of the world. And it's a complete difference.
I think that one thing I have to disagree with you a little bit, just in what you're saying, or at least to a certain extent, is that in the ancient times, I don't think many civilizations, of course, were primitive in those times, and many civilizations are primitive today. But at the same time, 3000 BC, there were very advanced civilizations, and their navies were advanced. And they weren't just floating in little reed canoes or balsa rafts. I mean, these civilizations had gigantic ships that were huge, as bigger than any ship of Columbus or the Spanish. And with Phoenician triremes, and with large number of sailors and supplies. I mean, these ships were very advanced, and it seems to me that if just as Spanish ships were capable of saving the world 500 years ago, these ships were capable of doing the same thing 5,000 years ago.
But that is not the disagreement. That is what I believe.
Yes.
What I'm sure of.
Well,
But what you do not seem to realize is that you can build much bigger ships by reed bamboo than you can ever build by planks.
and they can't be sunk, like you said. I mean, a reed ship can never sink.
They cannot sink. You can build a reed ship big as Queen Mary by reed bamboo. It's just a matter of having enough people harvesting enough reeds. But you cannot build a wooden ship that size because it will break on the wave crests. That's the difference. And that's why early man navigated the ocean on reed ships, and only gradually did they develop wooden ships. But definitely, it didn't start 3000 BC.
No, before
3000
that.
BC, there was something that made a much earlier civilization spread in all directions. And that is where we shall have an open eye for possibly sunken land.
Like Atlantis,
Yeah.
something like that. Wow, I think, of course, it's really fascinating, and I mean, that people traveled all over the world on these ships. There's no doubt in my mind that they did exactly that. And,
I'm sure too. We must realize that the cultural advance does not follow time chronologically. Civilization was much higher in ancient Egypt than it was in medieval Europe. And what we looked down upon people in medieval Europe, and with good reason, compared to what we will have to do if we look upon the Egyptians. And we must not believe that people in medieval Europe were more courageous or more inventive or more thirsty for prime material than they were in the days of the Egyptians and the Phoenicians. So I'm absolutely convinced that we are looking at people of that time with superior eyes, but with no reason at all.
Are you familiar with the idea of a pole shift, where occasionally the crust of the Earth is shifting slightly, and what was before the North Pole is now down? Or, for instance, the idea that mammoths are frozen in Siberia in the north, and that at one point the Earth shifted one time. And a lot of this has to do with Antarctica and huge ice caps at the base. You're familiar with the Peru map of the Turkish admiral, and how it seems to be so accurate of South America and Antarctica before there was ice in the covering all of Antarctica.
Of course, we know that within the lifetime of man, there have been more than one ice age. And there has been a warmer climate, for instance, in Scandinavia, Iceland and Greenland today. There were woods in those areas where there today is ice. So there has been climatic changes, but and then of course it has been possible many times to move back and forth across the Bering Strait by foot.
Even today you can do that.
Yes, I mean there are many things like this we have to take into consideration.
Sure. The Easter Islanders have the legend of Hiva, and Hiva is a lost land that's like Atlantis, but it's, to them, they believe, it's now under the ocean. What do you think of this?
I think that this legend is not made up by an Easter Islander, because I've studied all the Easter Island traditions that were recorded by the early Spaniards, by the early missionaries, last century. And there is not one with any contents like that. This is the sort of thing that the Easter Islanders will present to you today. That is why I would not accept any tradition on Easter Island today which is not the same as those recorded by Mr. Thompson and the early missionaries, and right up to Knoche before the First World War, when the real old-timers lived and serious traditions were written down. Today they will tell you what you like. It must not be taken seriously.
Right. What about Rongo writing? Do you see an origin?
I'm absolutely convinced that nobody has been able to decipher it. There's been all falsifications. And you put those people, like Barthel, to attest, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was, Barthel insisted that he could read the Rongo, and you put to him 2 tablets today and tell him to read one, and he will not, because he knows you can double check because of the signs. We have challenged him with all the archaeologists on my expedition. Nobody has read it. And the Russians had, through computer system, discovered that it is written in a language different from that in Polynesia today. So until we know, we learn how to decipher a script written in an unknown language, it will not be deciphered.
Now, in your book on the Maldive mystery, and you talk about the Indus civilization, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lofal. What about the comparisons made between the Rongo writing and ancient Harappan writing, which is also undeciphered?
I think it is interesting. I think that I must admit that many years ago I agreed with the Polynesianist Emery and with Metro and the other scholars that there could not be any connection for chronological and geographic reasons. But that is because everybody tried to bring it against the wind and the current. Half around the planet from Indus Valley to Easter Island. But Easter Island is much more accessible by way of the Atlantic, as I pointed out to you now. So, from a practical point of view, it is possible. Chronologically, there is an incredible gap, but there might have been stepping stones, theoretically. I don't exclude any root relationship, because there are signs which are similar.
Then the person in your book, Aku Aku, with the beard, is this an ancient Phoenician sailor or Celt, or what kind of person do you think this is? It's from ancient India? Do you have some idea?
So this is a question that I'm unable to answer yet, but I'm quite sure that it is one of those people that the Polynesians speak both in their own traditions, which look like Europeans. One of the kind of people that Roggevin saw ashore when he came there with red hair, white skin and long beard. One of those people that they speak of Inca traditions and Maya tradition, Aztec tradition. One of these people we have illustrated in Mexican and Peruvian art. It is still an open question who they were. But I think they were closer related perhaps to the Hittites and Phoenicians, or maybe the Guanches, who descend from the Berbers. I believe that the closest relatives we find in the Middle East or North America.
But you believe that those people are coming through the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic, to Colombia, Panama, then over to the east coast, west coast of Peru, and then on to Polynesia.
I think that we should learn from history. The same way the Spaniards came to the Pacific, they came from the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic, across Panama to Peru, and then
built more ships.
Peru, about Polynesia, and then went there.
And then do you think from Polynesia they could continue on west and back perhaps then through to Arabia?
They could do exactly what the Spaniards did. And that is, they came to Middle America, crossed the isthmus, built new ships on the other side, came to Peru, and like Magellan sailed on the southern tip of America, and like the expeditions from Peru sailed straight across to the Philippines and around the world and back to America. That is possible. I didn't say that the prehistoric man did it. The Europeans did it in medieval ages with boats which to my mind are much more flimsy than the good region.
What about going up the Amazon to Peru? Would that also have been possible?
That is possible. That is possible, and there is every reason to believe it was done.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure all of that happened, and
all the big rivers have been highways for early man. So it would be ridiculous to think that the Europeans were the first to do this work. All the people who knew the countryside and knew what to hunt and catch better than them could have done for hundreds of years.
When I read your book, The Maldive Mystery, I felt, though you didn't really say it, that you were drawing some connection between ancient Celts and the Harappan civilization and the Sumerians with the Maldives, and then with Easter Island and the Pacific with the reed boats, and perhaps South America.
I think that we are dealing with navigators. You have to be a navigator to get to the Maldive Islands. You have to be a navigator to get to Easter Island. And I don't think necessarily that people travel from one to the other of these places, but that these were offshoots of the same tree, I think is quite reasonable to conclude, because it's just weeks of travel between one area and the other, with stepping stones in the Panama Isthmus, for instance.
Like that. Wow. Well, just one last thing then. I'd like to say that, we appreciate talking with you. And we have formed a club in the United States we call the World Explorers Club, of people, like you said, who really go out to do things. And of course, you're definitely, I think, one of the leading people who have done that. And we would like you to be an honorary member of our club, and we were hoping you would just accept some honorary membership with us, if that would be all right with you. I don't know.
Well, you know, or you may, of course, you may not know, but I am one of the directors of the Explorers Club
In New York.
New York.
Yes, right.
I've been for many years. So, what is the difference here?
Our club is more, well, we'd be open to any person. It's a little bit like the South American Explorers Club in Lima.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
But that will give me one problem, and that is that they have created a Norwegian Explorers Club. And I did not accept membership because I felt that it was colliding with the other Explorers Club.
It's better just to belong to one Explorers Club.
Yeah, but I certainly appreciate that you are starting things like that. Wish you good luck, but I know that it will be ill feeling.
May I ask one last question?
Yes.
What brought you to this site here?
What brought me to this site?
Yes, why this site?
I finished my 3 new years of research on Easter Island, where I've been organizing archaeological works.
Was that in conjunction with the UCLA team that was working on Easter Island?
No, I always worked independently. But I came from Easter Island to look for a project in Peru. As a matter of fact, I had a plan to start down in Ilo, right next to Arica, below Lake Titicaca.
Mm-hmm.
When I gradually came up the coast and heard about Sipan, and when I saw, that was before professional archaeology had started in Sipan, Valteralva, who had confiscated the material from the tomb robbers, the Huaqueros. He showed me the golden masks and things he had found with inlays of lapis lazuli and teeth of spondylus, which was enough for me to see here we have the first proof that these people, the 3rd century after Christ, already knew the whole Pacific coast of South America, from Ecuador to Chile, to get this material. So I felt that this is an area that ought to be explored, and it was Valteralva who then took me to Tucumán, who was completely blank on the map. There's no map in the world before I came here.
Didn't the locals?
Showing Tucumán. The local people knew it, but to them, they were surprised, don't you have pyramids in Norway? I mean, to them, that was an everyday thing.
They knew these as pyramids, and they were considered.
All the local people
Sure.
knew it, and they knew it as El Purgatorio, because the Spaniards had told them that this was the entrance to hell, and they burned people in there who wouldn't accept Christianity. So local people feared it, and until the present, until I came, it was difficult to get people to work in there. No, they've overcome this. But there were only a few Peruvian archaeologists who knew that there was a site, and they didn't have the connections or the funds to start. So Valteralva suggested that I should try, and I went to see the representatives of the Peruvian government here, the Instituto Nacional de Cultura, and got the permission to start. This is a Peruvian project coordinated by me, finance.